All right. With that, I'll get started. Sarah, welcome. Thank you for taking the time today. It's great to have you on this thought leadership series.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be part of this series. Quick background on me. I lead the consumer analytics team for North America for New Balance Athletics Inc. And really, if I boil it down at the high level, essentially what our team is responsible for is understanding the consumer and their journey so that we are really building insights that fuel everything from product pipeline all the way to things like site experience, retention, loyalty programs, you name it. But really starts and ends with how do we build more relevant experiences for our consumers?
Excellent. Would love to know a little bit of how, since March of last year, this has played
Mhm.
out in regards to digital via other channels and what you've seen happening.
Yeah, so our company was on the path for digital transformation really ahead of the pandemic hitting. And I think, and I always go back and say, one of the benefits that came out of this was, I think, a broader organizational understanding of all of the consumer information and data that we did have access to, and how does that not only inform our own D2C strategies, but also as we thought about our retail partners, how can we use what we know about our consumers to help inform and make them successful as well?
Yes.
And how do we make sure we're delivering on consumer expectation?
Yes. Talk a little more to me about sort of what therefore happened in regards to how you harnessed data,
Yeah,
how you put it to work,
yeah.
and how you are putting it to work and what's coming out of it.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, about 5 years ago, we started on a journey to create our own consumer data hub,
Mhm.
which was essentially recognizing the fact that we had all these disparate data sources, right, that housed really rich information about our consumers, but they were locked in the silo of both the system itself as well as within the teams, right, that were in charge of that particular system.
Yeah.
So, how do we start breaking down those walls and start to build the insights that I was just talking about?
Mhm.
So, said a different way, if I know now, right, Sarah has two kids in her household, right, the last purchase that she made was a pair of running shoes. She's now actively browsing apparel. All of a sudden, I'm building a much more relevant experience for her. But I'm also able to say these are the things that resonate with this type of consumer.
So, in regards to your sort of push towards being sort of more front facing with your consumers, what are the types of experiences you are looking to power and are powering?
Sure, great question. So I think about experiences as far upstream as kind of consumer demand planning. Do we have the right product, right? But in terms of then, how does the consumer see the brand? Now we have all of this rich data where we can support anything from and traditional stuff, right? Product recommendations, sort rules, but also how do we get consumers to their intended product or into a product recommendation that makes the most sense for them. I think the biggest area of opportunity is how do you mirror some of the great experiences that someone has in store, particularly when the pandemic hit and that wasn't an option, to deliver some of that in a digital environment. And I think that's the piece that's probably the most challenging, but the most compelling if you do it right is how do you give consumer that level of confidence that they are selecting the right product for themselves? Um, because essentially, not only does that help conversion, but we know that's the number one indicator of retention. Did I have a great experience?
Understood. I have a hypothesis on this and I wanted to run this by you. Sports to me is one of the sort of leading categories in which social influence plays a big part. The ability to give the customer sort of a social cue when they are shopping in
Yeah,
regards to how interesting this product is, etc. So, any thoughts on that? Like, if I can see on the screen how many people are looking at the product, how many people
yeah,
just bought the product,
right.
how many people came back to buy the product, many such metrics that you can
Yeah.
surface from the data, how they would play a part.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and it kind of mirrors that in-store shopping experience where you're getting three friends to say they like the choice that you're making, right? And so this kind of community aspect that I think enhances what had become a very, it's not a lonely experience, but it's a very singular experience when I'm going online shopping, picking something for myself. Having the ability to have community weigh in. There's 100 people looking at this product. It must be okay. And it also has 5-star reviews, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's all of those cues where you are mirroring some of what it was like to try on an outfit in front of somebody else and them to
Yeah.
give thumbs up.
Yes. Yeah.
And clearly the demand is outsized to the pairs available.
Interesting.
Not only do you see the fact that it's a rush to get that product because people know that there's scarcity to it, then you have things like StockX and the other side of the marketplaces, right, that are reinforcing the fact that, okay, this is a cool product.
Yes, and I would imagine that events would play a big part. Running
Yeah.
events and so on that are happening sort of uh, at that time, right? Sporting events, whatever the case may be. If we can merge that into the urgency bit, as you talked about, might be very interesting to see as well.
Absolutely. And, we've been pretty active, as you can imagine, because of our heritage in running events.
Yes.
And those tended to be great places, right? Because people got to see the product, interact with the product.
Yes.
I'm in the mindset of using that product
Yes.
at that
Yes.
point of time,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
incredibly relevant time to be talking about product I might have not have even sought out or been familiar with, but I'm
Yes.
having an opportunity to see it.
Yes, I have an example for this that I always sort of find very interesting is that when Mexico women's team was playing a World Cup and they were winning, when the game was going on, somebody at our company was looking at the women's jersey, the one that
It
stood
was
for the game,
crazy. Yeah.
and they saw the curve like just go up in real time as this was happening. And I always thought that if we, use that as a urgency bit, that would be very interesting to see.
Yes, so cool. And I think going back to your earlier example is you almost, not to the same degree, but you're recreating that urgency by saying this many people have purchased this product, these many people are actively looking at this product.
Yeah, yeah. Sarah, so just moving on to sort of other areas, right? Location
Yeah.
of personalization, location, weather. How do you think about how to use some of that in your efforts for better experiences?
I think that's such rich territory because we have a couple of things at play. You have, as we think about my lifestyle product, for example,
Yep.
there's different geographic appeal for, folks in Philadelphia versus folks in LA, et cetera, right?
Yep.
Then as we think about even on just baseline weather and geography, to your earlier point, it's like we're selling trail running shoes and water repellent apparel, right? It's probably incredibly relevant for someone that's getting ready to enter into a rainy season as they start to think through, yeah, I probably need a new jacket for my outdoor running. And so, I think the more that we can think through what is going to be a use case for somebody and simultaneously a use case in the North and the South at the same exact might be different. And so how do you create that accordingly?
Yes. Overall, it is driving value for the consumer, right? It is a better experience. You and I are both shoppers, right? We will, we will be attracted and be retained by a brand if they are able to show us that they understand where we are at in our mindset in this moment in time. I'm used to everybody knowing where I am. So, what else, Sarah? What else are you thinking about as you look ahead in 2021 in regards to your personalization efforts
Yeah.
and experiences that you want to deliver and that you hold important to your roadmap?
Yeah, I think exactly what you said, which is how do we continue to deliver on consumer expectation, which changes and has changed so much since mid-March.
Yes.
And also how do we have systems and everything in place to deliver on that expectation?
Yeah.
I think that has been our focus, is ensuring that, hey, these are the things that we, whether it be BOPUS or ROPUS, right? All the things that create convenience for consumers. And so on our side, a lot of work has been done to ensure that our systems can accommodate that expectation and make it so that these experiences can be seamless.
Yes.
Because again, we have systems that weren't made for them to be seamless
Yes.
as a pure play D2C would have.
Yes.
So you're retrofitting a lot of things that were built never for this purpose.
Yes, yes. And we've seen sort of the rise of what I called uh, event-driven predictive systems, right? Because events, BOPUS is a multi-stage customer journey event, right? I order something, I approach store, I go pick it up, right? Each one is an event that drives some sort of experience that you have to deliver to your consumer. And I think this is not just COVID, I think it's a long term shift towards us having a supercomputer in our pockets, right? You just, as a brand, I think the primary desire is to know the consumer well enough to add value,
Yes,
but not be oh,
creepy.
not be creepy. So I think we saw a survey by I believe it was Forrester that says as the generations have changed, the younger audiences are ranking convenience higher and higher
Yeah,
over time as the survey has been done annually.
yeah. I believe that. And in delivering off convenience in an omni-channel way
Yeah.
has a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
But I always say, like, nobody cares how complex it is. They just want it done, right?
Yes.
And that's what's incumbent on all of us is to deliver against that and in the subtlety of that,
Yes.
so that it's not, to your point, an overt,
Yeah.
heavy-handed, I'm collecting data for data's sake, but rather I'm trying to create an experience that's better for you, more convenient for you, more efficient for you.
Yes.
And you end up with a product that you're incredibly happy with.
Yes.
So I think the challenge will remain there. I think it's just exciting.
Yes. You lead analytics, so I'll ask you this question in regards to machine learning and predictive models,
Yeah.
and how sort of you've seen analytics power some of what we are talking about here.
Yeah. Done a lot of work, as you can imagine, on kind of just forecasting demand planning, right? So, how do we have a better understanding of our consumer types and what we can reasonably expect them to do in the next year? So, getting smarter about what our expectation should be, which is incredibly powerful because it honestly identifies where you're winning and not winning. And so, I think from that, being able to power also additional business decisions is really interesting. And then on the experience side, it's really, as everybody can imagine, product recommendations. How do you continue to refine product recommendations? And going back to what we were talking about before, which is different inputs, like things like weather and et cetera. How do you make sure that you have a real-time way to deliver that relevant experience? And things like, recency, frequency, being able to understand, hey, is this person expected to come back at an individual level?
Yes.
And can we either accelerate them coming back,
Yes.
or do we need to change what we're saying to them to get them to come back?
Yes.
So I think those things are incredibly powerful and really go back to what we've been talking about, which is the common thread of how do I deliver something that's of value back to the consumer? And that's where that's what we want to power, is just a better experience
Yes. Yes.
overall.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've been thinking very hard about sort of dynamic segmentation, the power of now, right? What are they doing now? And what have they done very recently and most frequently?
Yeah.
Marry that to power what value they need now. And when will they come back? I think the time to next visit is a very in demand question
Yeah.
um, by brands to say, not only do I want to deliver a good experience now, what can I do to have them come back and come back faster?
Right.
So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.